Sasa Devora Bat Moshe. She was a woman who endured hardship in her youth, throughout her life, especially during the Holocaust, during World War II, and in Europe in general. Sasa Devora, Sidi, was the kind of person who appreciated life, period. No matter what life brings, no matter what her experience was, she appreciated, and she tried to rectify it. She tried to find a solution to it. Her husband, Les Alav Shalom, told me many, many stories about the Holocaust, the war, about his dear wife, how it happened, what happened. But I'm going to, if I may, just pick two stories which I think are extremely important for Sidi. After the war, after the horrific experiences of the Nazi Holocaust, whoever was left alive started to go back home to their town, to their country, to their home, and saw the death, the destruction along the way. Les finally got back home, and he met just a few people who survived. And then, as he was talking to them, he sees in the back of the room this beautiful girl, which he knew from before. As he told me, at that moment, he knew they were going to get married. And so they did. And this is not over. She was born, Sasa Devora, on January 31st, 1924. Excuse me if I don't pronounce it properly, in Cărușu, Romania. She was the daughter of very outstanding parents and family and grandparents and family, just like her husband was. Her husband was very familiar with Satmar, and he made it his business to explain to me why it's called Satmar Hasidim, because they came from a town in Romania called Santu Mare, hence Satmar. He met the Satmar Rebbe. He learned in his Beis Medrash, in his yeshiva, until the Nazis invaded Romania, where King Karl was trying to be very, very good to the Jews and saved the Satmar Rebbe, put him in his train, traveling to Switzerland. Les and Devora was saved by the grace of God for one simple reason: so you may survive, so her children and her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren. She, together with her dear husband, gave birth to a universe of their own. And how they loved their family. I remember very clearly Sidi getting ready to travel to England for her grandson's wedding. She was the happiest of happy. She couldn't contain herself. Les was trying to play the cool man. That was her heart of gold. As I met with Alice and Michael, Alice told me that the most important lesson she learned from her mom was to be compassionate, to have a good heart, to be understanding, to be helpful. She once came home to visit, and Alice saw her mom writing out checks. At that time, they fell on financial hardships, but she was writing out checks to a charity. So Alice said, "Mom, what are you doing? After all, we have a hard time." Her answer was typical of Sidi. Her answer was, as long as they have food to eat, they deserve also a chance to have food to eat. That was the heart of gold. That was the compassion. That was the understanding. That was the helpful God. That he came into her and said, "I'm going to spare you from the horrible experiences of the Holocaust so you could come and have your children and your great, great children." They finally immigrated to the United States in 1965 via Florence, Italy, where there too they had quite a few experiences. And finally landed in Cleveland. Sidi had a brother here, Martin Lax, waiting for them and helped them get established. If I may add my own experiences, I found that Sidonia Sasa Devara Bas Moshe was a very unique person. Not only did I know her as her rabbi, but also as a friend. And the kindness she showed is actually exemplary. It was incredible. Many times I met with Les Alav Hashem at his house because of shul business. And there were times when memory failed Les and he forgot things. So he used to call her over. She was in the kitchen. She didn't fool me for a minute. I knew she was listening to every word. But it was good. She paid attention. And he asked her for that information, whatever the information he needed, and she told him. Sidi was very active in the shul. The kind of activity we're talking about is not just helping out and doing here and coming and going to the store and buying. She poured her heart out for the community, for the shul. That compassion that she always had. And no problem ever bothered her because she knew that the answer was there, the solution was there. How many times did I call her on Erev Shabbos to say Good Shabbos? How are you, Sidi? Her first answer was, Baruch Hashem. Thank God. That's it. That was the whole answer. I was very happy to hear that. Sometimes she didn't feel well. She was in a hospital. And when she came back on Friday, I called her up. How are you? She says, well, I was sick in the hospital, but now I'm back. I'm fine. So that gave me some more hope, who she was. Her understanding was very keen. She was a very wise and very intelligent woman. She loved her husband. No, she adored her husband. Together they were one. And whenever and whatever one couldn't do, the other one did. She was there for him, for her family, and never, ever did she have a sad face on. Never. I saw her many, many times. I even went to her house to visit her. She was always smiling. Always say, thank God. all is well. I knew all was not well. I knew she had problems, health problems. But she denied that. It was okay. Things will be better. That is the kind of attitude that she left you, dear family. It's true, unfortunately. She's not in front of you. She's not there to hug and kiss and say, Mom, how are you? But she left you a legacy. She left you memories and beautiful lessons. The lessons of a golden heart, always smiling, always hopeful. Remember the hardship she had in Europe. She had the right to be depressed, but of course not her. She was a fighter. That's what we have to do. That's how we have to be. That's the characteristic trait of Les and Sidi. They gave birth to 3 wonderful human beings. Alice, Michael, and Vera, all highly accomplished, very well educated, all professionals, all smart and wise. But let's not forget, they are the epitome of the example of their parents. If you want to know what was Les like, what was Sidi like, look at them. Talk to them. That is the beauty of parents bestowing a blessing upon their children to take over that holy torch that both your parents were holding. And it was very, very dear to them. The community, the Jewish community, and the shul. They were fighters. I could attest to that. I was there. I saw it. And if anyone said anything wrong about Taylor Road Synagogue, he was on top of them. Because it was his life. You have to do that. You have to safeguard the community. And he succeeded. It is a loss to all of us, not only to you, dear family, to everybody, to all the friends and families, to the community, to the synagogue, to me, to all of us. It is a loss. But the only consolation is that I know that we learned a lot from her, from Sidi, and Les. And I keep on saying both names because they were one team. They were one neshama, one soul. Please join me in a prayer. We ask Hashem to greet Sasa Devora Bas Moshe, to be with him. She should pray for all of us, specifically and particularly her dear family, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. She should pray for your prosperity and health and longevity, to give you time to teach the next generation and the next generation about Sidi and Les. May she pray for all of us. May she pray for her community. May she pray for shalom, for peace in the world. May she pray for peace, shalom, in Israel. Amen. Michael?
Thank you, Rabbi, for so eloquent, for such an eloquent eulogy, which so aptly captures our mother's essence. Our mother is gone, to join our father's neshama. Yet we would like her to be with us. To hear her voice, her laugh, and occasional admonition. It will take a bit of time before the instinct of calling her on the phone wears off. It will be the memories of big and small events which will help us cope. I would like to share with you two such events. On one of my recent visits, I was mentioning to Mom the name of the street we lived on in Romania, Satu Mare. She had a grimace on her face, as if she's trying to hear what I'm saying. So I repeated several more times, Strada Ghioceilor, Snowdrop Street in English. Then the grimace softened on her face, and she started to recite a poem in Romanian that she learned in elementary school in Romania. Plăpând-o ghiocel, ieșind de zăpadă, strigă Tatăl nostru ca lumea să-l vadă. The fragile snowdrops, as it comes through the snow, shouts Our Father so the world can see it. Even on occasions, I would test her memory and processing ability to understand where she was. I would have not expected such a deep memory bank retrieval. The second item is about mysterious ways events impact other events. Last Monday, 2 days after she had a successful surgery to repair her femur, I get a link from my sisters to Mom's video interview in the archives of the American Holocaust Memorial Museum. I listened to the voice tapes at the time when she recorded it. I was aware of that. But I was not fully aware of the existence of videotapes. That night, I viewed about 15 minutes of a 3-hour video, and it was an eerie sensation listening to a young-looking mom, about 10 years younger than me now, speaking eloquently about her past. The mysterious ways, events triggering other events that I alluded to before, goes like this. As Mom was admitted to the hospital, one of the nurses recognized Mom as the lady who survived the Holocaust that she met on a previous occasion in the hospital. She had an interest on the subject. She chatted with Mom, and my sister Alice also chimed in and said, "Why don't you look up our uncle's book if you're interested in the subject, and there's a lot more information in it." She went online looking for the book, and what she came across is the oral history interview with Sidonia Benedek on this website, the American Holocaust Memorial Museum. It was this nurse who alerted us to the existence and easy access to this video. I'm looking forward with some sadness and with anticipation and pride to viewing the 3-hour or so interview. Tehi zichra lenetzach.
Vera.
Before I start, I want to take the opportunity to thank my brother and my sister for taking such good care of her. For many years, I was very far. And my sister was here on a daily basis, and my brother would come to help her out. And they were amazing, amazing daughter and son to my mother. I'm the youngest of our mother's children, but I think I may have spent more time alone with her than my siblings did. When we left Romania, Michael and Aliska were already teenagers, and I was 9.5. So during the months we spent in Italy waiting for our papers to America, finally free from one of the world's most repressive regimes, my siblings were out and about exploring Rome and their new freedoms. Our father was also out of the house most of the day, having been offered a fortuitous job at Tenenbaum's kosher restaurant there in Rome. Left alone with Mom, I had the daily pleasure of seeing her relaxed and happy for the first time, seeing and understanding who she was as a person, not just as a tired, struggling mom. Later, here in Cleveland, Michael and Aliska went away to college, and again, I had the opportunity to spend a lot of one-on-one time with Mom. What I learned at a very young age is that our mother was always a pleasure to be with. There's no question she was a strict parent who garnered respect. We did respect her. And we always knew we had to toe the line, all of us. But she was also a person who was always kind, always positive, and never said or did a mean thing to anyone, as far as I know. She just didn't have a bitter bone in her body. Despite surviving 3 concentration camps, losing parents and siblings to the Nazis, only to survive and get stuck for many years in an authoritarian country. And then having to start a new life in her 40s, in a new country, among strangers, without even knowing the language. I'm sure none of that was a picnic for her. But she read a lot, and in those early years in America, she watched TV with me. And we both learned to speak English watching sitcoms like Leave It to Beaver and Hogan's Heroes. And Hogan's Heroes made her laugh and shake her head and say, "Unfortunately, the Nazis weren't that stupid." That's as close as she ever got to talking about her Holocaust experiences in those days. It wasn't until I was in graduate school in the 80s that I happened to be back in town when she was to be interviewed for the Holocaust Project. I went with her and listened, and that's the tape that Michael referred to, that we just discovered. Amazingly, such a gift these last days just before she died. What struck me then and forever afterwards is that when the story she was telling started approaching something really painful, some of which was probably agonizing stuff, I imagine, she cut the story short and followed it up with something positive, like the story about the German guard who gave her an extra piece of bread, or the one who allowed them to find and bake potatoes while they were in a hard labor camp, starving and being forced to build an airfield for the Nazis. I believe she survived precisely because of that positive way of approaching life in the world. The reason I wanted to tell you all about my time alone with her is because I want you to understand that I had plenty of opportunities to see her complain, to show bitterness, to show weakness of character, but she never did, never. Our mother was a beautiful person inside and out. And if you look at that tape, you'll see. By the way, all you have to do is Google Benedek, Holocaust, and it will come right up. In my 61 years as her daughter, I never ever saw her show any of the ugliness that we humans are capable of. She was the kind of person to whom people were drawn because they instinctively recognized that she was a kind and gentle soul. What they probably didn't realize is just how brave and strong she also was. We will all miss her terribly, but if there's one prevailing thing I learned from my mother, is how to be positive. I know that once a kind and gentle soul like hers touches your life, you will always feel its presence. Having her as our mother was truly a gift.
Gil, Sidi's grandson, will be reading a message from Aaron.
This is a message from my brother and Avital's brother, Sidonia Benedek, the eldest of Michael and Vicky's kids, and he lives in England with his 3 beautiful kids and his wife, Emily. We are all so sad to hear about Grandma's passing. She has always been such a towering presence in our lives, in my life. She was such a wonderful grandmother, always so caring and so giving to us. I remember how Grandma was so happy when we went to shul with Zeta, and all of us were so thrilled to come back home to her delicious and legendary Shabbat meals. In fact, we always raved about all these meals she made on Shabbat, holidays, and weekends, and especially that she was always seemed to have hot soup ready to serve. Over the past 8.5 years, Grandma was also truly a loving and caring great-grandmother to Gavriel, Yoel, and Kayla. Although Emily, the children, and I live far away, all of us cherished our telephone conversations with Grandma. We have such fond memories of spending time with her last summer in Cleveland. The children enjoyed chatting and playing with her. Even a year later, Yoel, who is named after our beloved Zeta, still remembers how happy she was to play bouncy ball with him. We know Grandma didn't have an easy start to life and experienced unspeakable hardship before, during, and after the war. Grandma spoke of her mother Miriam in such a caring way that when we came to have our own daughter 16 months ago, we wanted to maintain that connection. We named our daughter Kayla Tova Miriam, the 4th generation of females to be born from our great-grandmother. I realize that I cannot in a few words reflect on every memory that I have of Grandma or do justice to what she has meant to all of us. I want to share some reflections and lessons, though, that I've taken from her over the years. As a young child, Grandma and Zeta of blessed memory were the first people I remember who kept a kosher home. I remember them explaining to me how they separated cutlery and dishes and didn't mix meat and milk. I remember Grandma's calm vigilance in making sure the kitchen remained kosher, and at some stage I even remember thinking it was cool to keep kosher. While it wasn't until many years later that I adopted this myself, Grandma and Zeta's strong Jewish identity and the way they chose to express their Jewish observance and identity had a profound impact on me. I clearly remember a conversation I had with Grandma one December many, many years ago when I was a child. We were taking a walk outside, and it was around the time of Hanukkah. I remember insisting to Grandma that we should go home and watch a movie about Christmas. She explained to me very patiently, but insistently, that we have our own holidays to celebrate, and that we should be proud to celebrate them. Years later, I still remember how she said this in a way that emphasized our own Jewish observance, without insulting the beliefs of others. I actually think about this conversation very often, and how I found myself in the role Grandma played all those years ago with our own children. Another very clear memory are the times Grandma insisted that I smile more often. Stop being so serious and not worry about the far-off future. Grandma would tell me to live in the present and appreciate the day before me. As a child, this was no cliche. I still don't find it easy to do this, but it's a life lesson that I reflect on almost daily. It reminds me of a passage in one of Rabbi Zelig Pliskin's books, Gateway to Happiness, in which he writes that the cause of much sadness and suffering for many people is not their present experiences. Rather, they cause themselves pain by regretting and resenting the past or worrying about the future. By living in the present, you save yourself much needless emotional pain. I think Grandma would have really liked and agreed with this sentiment. A parable is related in the Talmud about a man traveling through the desert who is hungry, thirsty, and tired. He finally encountered a tree offering delicious fruit, plenty of shade, and a spring of water, and he partook and enjoyed all of this. As the man was about to leave, he turned to the tree, and wanting to express his thanks, thought of ways to bless the tree. But he struggled at first, asking, with what should I bless you? The tree already had sweet fruit, it already offered plenty of shade, and already had a beautiful spring of water flowing beneath it. The man finally realized and declared, "There is one thing with which I can bless you. May it be God's will. May it be God's will that all the trees planted from your seeds should be like you." Excuse me. Grandma, you and Zeta provided for and offered us all so much. We miss you so much. Your devotion to family, to kindness, to selflessness, and a giving nature will continue to inspire us to live our own lives in a meaningful and giving way, always striving to think of others. May it indeed be God's will that all the trees planted from your seed be just like you. Thank you.
Everyone, please rise for the memorial prayer. The Kelmalei. Kel male rachamim shochen b'meromim המצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע בזירים את נשמת ששה דבורה בת משה שהלכה לעולמה בעבור שאנחנו מתפללים בעד הזכרת נשמתה בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה לכן בעל רחמים יסתיריה בצדק כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים בנשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן. Please be seated. The interment will take place at Mount Olive Cemetery at the Taylor Road Synagogue section. The family will receive friends at the Widman residence at 26176 Fairmont Boulevard in Beechwood, following the interment until 5 p.m. Then, tonight, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, from 2 to 4, and from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Contributions are suggested to Telze Yeshiva in Cleveland or at Chabad of Cleveland.